The Olympic movement is embroiled in a scandal that's overshadowed the Sydney 2000 Games.
Obviously, allegations of bribery and corruption are pretty hideous and pretty sinister and do no good for the Olympics idea.
Sydney has been caught in the culture of the International Olympic Committee, a secret world of money, patronage and power.
The IOC, until this recent set of scandals that surrounded it, had an aura that almost put it on the right hand of God.
Australia's own Lord of the Rings and Master Olympic dealmaker has found himself centre stage, fighting accusations that he bought the Games. But the real battle over the Sydney Olympics has been a ruthless power struggle behind the scenes. Just before Christmas, Olympic officials and athletes gathered at the Sydney headquarters of the Australian Olympic Committee to toast the end of a very big year. In the role of Master of Ceremonies, Australia's Olympic Supremo John Coates, former rower, sports administrator, businessman, lawyer, and president of the AOC. There was good reason for celebration. John Coates has turned Sydney 2000 into a gold mine for the AOC and himself into the key power broker of the Games.
John Coates is one of the most well-respected and probably well-liked people in sport. He has ensured that Australian sport will continue to be successful and financially successful well and truly after the 2000 Olympic Games have finished.
A key factor in John Coates's winning strategy has been the forging of a brutally efficient alliance with the Minister for the Olympics, Michael Knight. Knight is the front man, Coates the master controller behind the scenes. Your government, and you in particular, have been accused of politicising the Games. What do you say to that?
The Games inevitably have a political dimension that's not a party political dimension. The politics of dealing with the IOC, the politics of running the board, the politics of dealing with the media ensure that the Games always have a political dimension.
Olympic politics have consumed Sydney ever since it set out to win the Games. The Olympic Games are owned by Juan Samaranch's IOC. Each 4 years, they're auctioned off to the highest bidder.
Did you get those? I sent the soccer ball with the colours. Did it get there?
Yeah.
The ball got there?
Maybe I will give it to my wife.
Well, did you get yours? I sent you a soccer ball.
Yeah, mais un ballon de football là. On n'a pas vu ça. Non. Moi j'ai pas eu de ballon. Ballon? Yeah. Ballon de foot? Ouais. Soccer football. Yeah. Ah, avec les.
The system of bidding for the Games is absolutely hideous. Say, Barcelona's taking people for holidays. Well, we better give them 2 holidays. And there's a bit of, trying to outdo the other and trying to cap it. Now, that always is going to lead to things that are not quite proper, shall we say.
Yeah, and if you have a look in the schedules, They are identified as payment to Ugandan National Olympic Committee for Ugandan National Games, payment to Kenyan National Olympic Committee for Special Olympic projects.
John Coates's revelation last month that he offered $35,000 in funding to 2 African delegates to induce them to vote for Sydney made news around the world.
Is it officially sanctioned bribery? Is that what this...
No, it's not. It's a nonsense. It's not. This is assistance to the athletes and coaches and to the National Olympic Committees of countries who have an IOC member.
Were they extorting this money?
No.
Coates was unfazed. For this veteran of 3 bids and 20 years in the Olympic movement, it was just another deal.
It had been impressed on us that if you want to get someone's vote, you have to ask them for the vote, and you have to create a sense of having some obligation to you when they go into that room.
I don't know what people expect. If they expect that you send out a brochure of how pretty Sydney is with a letter saying we're going to build lots of nice facilities, would you please vote for us, and think that's going to win you an Olympic Games, you've got to be kidding. The bidding war is fuelled by the pot of gold at the end of it. For
For governments, it's the political prestige and potential boost to the economy. For the Olympic Committee of the host country, it's the sporting glory and the enormous financial windfalls divvied up with the IOC.
Lovely to see you again.
Thank you. I saw the IOC up fairly close, and it really repelled me. And I felt that it was an organisation dedicated to enhancing its revenue, and that the sport came far sort of below that as a priority.
The Olympic rings are the most lucrative marketing symbol in the world, a veritable licence to print money. The opening masterstroke of the Australian Olympic Committee was securing the rights to the rings in the lead-up to the Sydney Games.
We introduced this bill into the Parliament called the Olympic Insignia Protection Bill, which meant that the Australian Olympic Committee then had total marketing rights over those symbols and mottos.
How much money do you think that's earned them over the years?
I don't know, but one of the reasons for doing it was to make the Olympic Committee independent of government handouts.
Owning the rings was just one part of the AOC's grand plan. In 1993, John Coates talked $135 million out of the Keating government for a program aimed at ensuring a record gold medal tally in 2000.
In lane 3, representing Australia, Grant Hackers. In lane 4, representing Australia, Ian Thorpe. Representing Australia, filling lane 6, Daniel Kowalski. Lane 7, representing Australia, Kieran Perkins.
But Coates's main agenda has been to use the Sydney Olympics to set up the AOC financially for life.
The 84 Olympics delivered for American sports $300 million. Calgary, I think, was some $50 million to the Olympic Committee. I think Nagano's turned out at around 100. This is the one chance to set the Australian Olympic Committee up and to continue to fund the athletes and our sports at the level we're now doing.
Take your marks.
To ensure the AOC brought home its own gold, John Coates engineered a series of extraordinary deals, which delivered his committee control of the Games and a huge financial windfall. It began with the bid.
A city cannot bid without the endorsement of the National Olympic Committee in that country. And what the Australian Olympic Committee recognised is that you could charge for giving that consent.
The people who were involved in those negotiations say that basically you had them over a barrel.
Well, they wanted to bid, yeah. So if they didn't want it, we wouldn't have gone ahead if it wasn't on terms and conditions acceptable to us.
The terms and conditions of the AOC's support were set out in a document called the Endorsement Contract. The AOC demanded $60 million to buy out its marketing rights over the rings. The New South Wales government would construct all the venues and underwrite all the costs. The Games would be run by a private company owned by the AOC. So taxpayers would foot the bill, but have virtually no say in the Games.
The winner is Sydney.
While Sydney celebrated, that night in Monte Carlo, the next contract was being signed. It provided a new win and more leverage for the Australian Olympic Committee. The host city contract guaranteed the AOC 90% of the profits from the Games. The remaining 10% would go to Samaranch's IOC. But the Premier of the time, John Fay, was determined to carve out a bigger stake for the government. He set out to win back some control of the Games.
Well, the advice to him was that a better form to run the games would be a statutory authority, all the checks and balances that come with that, rather than a company of the Australian Olympic Committees. And so we said, sure.
So John Coates did another deal, but there was a very big catch. A statutory authority with a board answerable to the government would be set up to run the games. The catch came in the form of a secret condition insisted on by the AOC. Coates got himself a veto over the appointment of certain board directors, including the president, the chief executive and senior staff. In order to maximise the AOC's 90% profit, he also secured a veto over the budget for running the games.
Why was this such an important factor to you? What was your rationale there?
Oh, to protect the profit. This is the legacy for Australian Olympic sport.
This deal, which led to the establishment of the Sydney Organising Committee, SOCOG, set the stage for the bitter conflicts to come.
The major view was that the basic structure was inherently unstable, that there were too many fundamental conflicts of interest which were going to be difficult to resolve.
The conflicts were played out in a blistering boardroom battle over the financial spoils of the Games. It began in late 1995, when John Coates, eager to maximise the profit, moved to assert his budget veto.
I think there was a degree of bewilderment, amazement around the board table.
You were basically threatening to sue directors if your profit wasn't guaranteed.
Sure, they realised they didn't have an indemnity and they'd be responsible for their actions.
It would have been a bizarre situation, knowing the degree of public funding behind the AOC and behind SOCOG, for taxpayers' funds to be used to have the chairman of the AOC suing the directors of SOCOG or vice versa.
Coates's ruthless quest for his outcome claimed its first casualty. Gary Pemberton, the highly respected chairman of Qantas, resigned as president of the deadlocked SOCOG board.
Every Olympic Games has its share of politics and they come and go, and I'm not sure whether we're waxing or waning at the moment, but I suspect that'll continue for another 4 or 5 years, one way or another.
Pemberton's departure left SOCOG in turmoil and Coates still pushing for an outcome.
And it was my role to come in and negotiate a deal to remove that impasse, to ensure the legacy for the athletes, but to also ensure that SOCOG could function.
Jeffrey will work out in the long run that it's not size that matters.
Michael Knight had become Minister for the Olympics when Bob Carr's Labor government was elected in 1995. Knight has thrown himself into the game of Olympic politics with a vengeance. He rarely misses a photo opportunity, and from the start he's taken a hands-on approach to running the Games.
Don't run me around because I can't.
And it got to the stage really where something had to be done to sort the Olympics out. There needed to be a solution.
The solution was found over dinner for 3 at a restaurant in Sydney's Chinatown. It became known as the Night of the Long Prawn.
What was the deal that was done?
Well, the deal was done was that I would guarantee off the TV rights a fixed sum for the AOC, and in return they would give up their veto power.
John Coates had pulled off another fabulous deal. In return for giving up its budget veto and 90% share of the profits, the AOC was guaranteed a fixed sum of $100 million.
$100 million was agreed to be paid to the AOC. Interestingly, though, not out of the profit of the Games, but out of the initial revenue of the Games. In other words, the AOC gets its 100 off the top before we work out whether we've got a profit. So again, pretty clever negotiation, you'd have to say.
There is a view on this occasion that you, like the previous governments, were out-negotiated by Coates.
Well, I was starting from a position where the previous government had given everything away, and I was able to claw some back.
But Coates was one step ahead again. Far from relinquishing power, he insisted on a clause that would cement his control of the Games. A body called the Sports Commission was set up under SOCOG, chaired by Coates and controlled by the AOC. The Sports Commission was delegated all of the board's responsibilities to do with sport.
People are concerned that the Sports Commission does have that power, that its decisions can't be challenged and that the SOCOG board need know nothing about them.
Well, we do tell them.
After the event?
Yeah, sure. They get the minutes of our meetings. They see the register of all our policy decisions, and I'm available at all the board meetings to answer any questions they may have in respect of them. But they can't change our decisions, no.
The deal that gave the AOC $100 million and control of the Sports Commission marked the start of a firm friendship between John Coates and Michael Knight.
Who's actually running the Games?
I see it's a combination of a duopoly of power, Michael Knight and John Coates.
This alliance would soon prove crucial to Michael Knight's own ambitions to carve out an even greater role, paving the way for his takeover as president of SOCOG.
I didn't want people to think that the government was trying to grab power for the sake of grabbing power. But after the difficulties they had in Atlanta, it became obvious that if the big, powerful US couldn't get the Games right, with all of their advantages, what hope did poor little Sydney have unless we put the muscle of the government behind what was happening?
Michael Knight took over as president of the board of SOCOG in September 1996.
When Michael Knight crowned himself as the chairman of the SOCOG board, as well as being the minister, then it was evident that it was being drawn very close to the government and it was being politicised.
It has been commented to me at the highest level that this is an unusual situation and that there is a concern in the IOC at the Games being perceived to be so political.
Knight's takeover as president would intensify the political turmoil and speed up the revolving door at SOCOG. Chief Executive Mal Hemmeling found himself next in the firing line. He failed to win the support of either the AOC or Minister Knight. Knight and Coates gave a private briefing to editors of the Fairfax newspapers. The message was that SOCOG was in disarray and in no shape to run the Games. Key positions remained vacant. Preparations had barely begun. The resulting headlines said it all. Games in crisis. Knight steps in.
Why were you privately telling senior journalists about what was going wrong under Hemmeling in a private meeting, knowing that it would be in the newspapers the next day?
We never said any such thing.
No doubt we talked about staff, but I don't recall the extent of it.
That was seen as a deliberate move to undermine Mal Hemmeling.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Hemmeling's resignation was announced by Michael Knight.
Earlier this morning, the board of the Sydney Organising Committee for the Olympic Games accepted the resignation from Dr Mal Hemmeling as Chief Executive.
Ignoring orders to get back to their offices, staff turned out to vent their anger at Hemmeling's treatment.
We are absolutely committed.
The board, meanwhile, staged a show of support for Michael Knight.
Well, we're all a bit like we're, in the school football photograph, standing behind the press table. You're on a board of a company. It happened to be going through a difficult moment. That goes with the territory. I mean, I think if you're all asked to stand there, you stand there.
And what was your response to the outrage expressed by some directors?
So what?
So what?
Yeah, that is the power of the Sports Commission.
With a state election due next month, the political brawling has broken out again. The coalition has moved to make the Games an election issue, saying it wants to appoint a non-politician as SOCOG president
We believe we need to send a signal to the community to lift the cloud off the Olympics of depoliticising the Games.
The Coalition also says it wants to separate the roles of Minister and so-called President. What's your position on this?
I won't agree.
The political manoeuvring over who should be president erupted just before Christmas in the most acrimonious falling out of all. At the centre of it was the man who'd been the public face of the Sydney Olympics.
I'm hoping, to de-Olympicise myself.
Rod McGeoch led Sydney's bid. He's the latest and best-known casualty of the bitter conflicts behind the scenes.
I took the view that I was in a tornado of some kind of smear campaign and I just wasn't prepared to put up with it.
The tide started running against McGeoch late last year, after he'd been touted as a likely future president of SOCOG under a coalition government. McGeoch had built a lucrative new career on the success of Sydney's bid. He wrote a book, picked up a string of consultancies and became a favourite on the speakers circuit. At one point he used his private marketing company to try to sell new broadcast technology to the IOC. He was also a paid advisor on the Athens bid for the 2004 Games, for a fee rumoured in government and Olympic circles to have been $1 million.
Did you ever see any conflict in any of your activities, like working on the Athens bid, for example?
No. I mean, again, it's my bid experience. You know, SOCOG is about organising an event that's already been won.
Well, there were a number of business activities that Rod was involved in that he and I had some tensions over. But since he's no longer on the board, those are not relevant things.
In mid-November, a story appeared in the Daily Telegraph claiming McGeoch had demanded a fee of $8,000 for a speech about the Olympics. The Telegraph had been leaked a copy of a board paper about the matter written by Michael Knight. It was the first of 3 leaks suggesting conflict between McGeoch's business affairs and his role at SOCOG. McGeoch claimed the first he knew of the fee was when he took a phone call from the journalist concerned.
He mentioned the words that there was a dirt file on me, and he mentioned that he said, gee, these Olympic officials really do hate you, don't they?
How did the Daily Telegraph get hold of your board paper?
No idea.
Nobody else knew who I was in that report unless the President had disclosed it. I got to assume it's come out of the President's office.
Michael Knight's office?
Yeah.
Well, that's just completely untrue. It's nonsense.
This afternoon, with the deepest regret, I tendered my resignation from the board of SOCOG to the Premier.
McGeoch's resignation brought the poisoned politics out of the boardroom and into full public view.
Welcome aboard the Olympic Explorer bus. Today you will see firsthand the work of the New South Wales Government in getting the site ready for the Olympics in 2000. Station Square to your left is where most people will be arriving to watch the Olympic and Paralympic Games. On the right through the mangrove wetlands, you'll get glimpses of Homebush Bay itself.
18 months out from the opening ceremony, the physical preparations for the Sydney Olympics are well on track. Many of the venues are finished and Homebush has been transformed into a model Olympic complex.
We are now on Olympic Boulevard, passing the Sydney Superdome. Next door is the gigantic Olympic Stadium, capable of seating 110,000 people. It is the largest Olympic stadium in history.
You could say it's the world's largest Meccano set. This is what real men play with.
But Sydney's paid a high price to get this far. The cost to taxpayers is $2.3 billion. The city has gained some world-class facilities and a coveted event. But in the process, it's lost sight of the Olympic spirit, of solidarity, fair play and friendship amid the ugly struggle over the spoils.
This was supposed to be the athletes' games, and it's not really supposed to be, you know, the politicians' games or you know, the government games.
I know these games are going to be special. The Australians really respect the athletes.
Hoping to restore public faith in the Olympics, $30 million will be spent on advertising between now and the Games. The financial success of the event depends on it.
I have invented a special training I call the Kangaroo Hope.
The Sydney 2000 Olympic Games. Share the dream, share the spirit.
SOCOG has to raise $600 million through ticket sales. That's 5 million tickets in Australia alone, the most ambitious target ever. It's also struggling to find new sponsors and as a result faces a budget shortfall of $200 million. The bottom line of the Games, SOCOG's promise of a $30 million profit to the taxpayer, is now in doubt.
I just hope that they're going to come out and watch us, and we'll do our best that we possibly can.
But over at the Australian Olympic Committee, they're already counting their winnings.
I think that's enough, eh?
It's getting towards $200 million. But the state government is providing the AOC and its foundation. The AOC's done very well and commendably well done.
Compared with the taxpayer?
Compared with the taxpayer, yes. The taxpayer has paid for the privilege of paying for the Olympics.
Can you at this stage give a guarantee to the taxpayers that their $30 million profit will be assured?
You want me to guarantee against the $100 million, do you? No way.
They'll be celebrating here long past 2000. Olympic sport is flush with funds, and there'll be $120 million left in the AOC's coffers after the Games. John Coates has achieved his aim, courtesy of the taxpayer, of an independently wealthy AOC. And you can be sure the story won't end there. For this champion of the game of Olympic politics, there'll always be another deal.